Shy girl visits the ER for an intimate emergency, unaware her doctor is a millionaire, and falls for her. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room flickered above, casting a sterile glow across the rows of tired faces and aching bodies. Maria Alvarez sat in the farthest corner, curled inward, as if trying to disappear into her oversized sweatshirt. Her hands rested protectively over her lower abdomen, fingers twitching slightly every time another wave of pain crept through her. She glanced around the room, eyes darting nervously between a man coughing into his sleeve, a child sobbing in his mother's lap, and the bored receptionist clicking her pen against a clipboard. Every noise felt like it echoed, loud, too loud. She kept her gaze low, focusing on the fraying seam of her jeans, trying to hold herself together. She had waited 3 days to come here. The discomfort had started quietly, a dull, annoying ache, but it had grown worse, and now it burned. She knew it was something intimate, something she would not even speak aloud to her sister. But she had no insurance, no doctor of her own, and definitely no money to waste. Coming to the hospital was a last resort. It felt like surrendering. A nurse called her name. "Maria Alvarez?" She looked up, startled, as if being caught. Slowly, she stood, clutching her small purse with both hands, and followed the nurse into a narrow hallway. They passed closed doors and carts of medical supplies before being led into a modest examination room. The nurse's voice was kind, but brisk. "Please change into the gown. The doctor will be with you shortly." Maria nodded, her throat dry. The curtain closed behind the nurse with a whoosh, and she was alone. She looked at the gown. Her fingers struggled with the ties, and she winced when she moved too quickly. The cold of the vinyl bench against her skin made her shiver. She heard footsteps, then a voice, low and gentle. "May I come in?" she whispered. "Yes." The curtain opened, and a man stepped inside. He wore a white coat over navy scrubs and had a calm, collected expression. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his badge read, "Dr. Thea." His smile was subtle, non-invasive. "Good evening, Maria. I'm Dr. Ramirez. I'll be taking care of you tonight. I understand you're in some pain?" She could not meet his eyes. Her cheeks burned as she murmured, "Yes, it hurts, down there." She gestured vaguely toward her abdomen. "It's really bad. I didn't know where else to go." Theo nodded gently and wheeled his stool closer, careful to keep his tone soft. "Thank you for telling me. I know this kind of pain isn't easy to talk about, but you're safe here. You did the right thing by coming in." Maria's eyes watered from a mix of relief and humiliation. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. He asked a series of questions about the pain, when it started, if she had experienced anything like this before. She answered in fragments. When he asked about her medical insurance, she lowered her head. "I don't have any." Theo didn't pause. "That's okay. Let's focus on getting you better first. Then we'll talk about next steps. We have financial assistance programs here, so don't worry about that right now." He continued the exam, explaining each step clearly, never rushing her, never acting distant. When he was done, he stood, removed his gloves, and washed his hands at the sink. "It looks like a treatable infection," he said. "A round of antibiotics should clear it up. I'll also give you something for the pain. You'll need to drink plenty of water and rest, okay?" Maria nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. She brushed it away quickly, embarrassed. "I didn't want to come. I thought they'd tell me to leave," she admitted. Theo leaned slightly on the counter, folding his arms. "You're not the first person who's felt that way. But the ER isn't just for emergencies. It's for people who need help and don't know where else to go. I'm glad you came." Maria looked up, finally meeting his eyes. There was something familiar in them, a warmth that unsettled her, but not in a bad way. It reminded her of something, though she couldn't place it. As he turned to leave, he paused and added, "I'll send a nurse with your discharged papers and prescriptions. If you feel worse at any time, come back. You matter, Maria. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't." And with that, he left her sitting there, stunned, not by the diagnosis, but by the simple kindness of being treated like a person instead of a burden. She looked down at her lap and took a shaky breath. Maybe the worst of the pain was over. Maybe something else had just begun. The lab technician had just wheeled Maria away for a few standard tests when Theo returned to his workstation, rubbing the back of his neck. The ER was busier than usual tonight, but something about Maria lingered in his mind. Her voice, the way she had clutched her purse, her shy but quietly resilient gaze. He opened her file to update his notes, and his eyes landed on her full name, Maria Alvarez, 24, Hispanic, no insurance, lives in a low-income apartment complex near 8th Street. 8th Street. His fingers froze on the keyboard. A flicker of memory, uninvited but sharp, passed through his mind. 2 years ago, rain coming down in sheets, his white coat soaked, his backpack hanging off one shoulder, half broken. He had been standing at the checkout line of a corner grocery store, cold, tired, and utterly defeated. He had just finished a night shift as a fourth-year medical student. His feet ached, his brain was mush. He had picked up a pack of ramen noodles and a cheap granola bar, hoping to stretch his last $7 through the weekend. When the cashier rang it up, his card got declined. Twice. He remembered the heat rising to his ears. He had told the cashier to cancel it, that he would just leave it, that he was fine. He wasn't. But then a soft voice behind him had spoken. "I've got it." He turned to see a girl in a supermarket uniform, tiny name tag reading Maria. She looked young, maybe 22, her dark hair pulled into a braid. Her eyes met his, not with pity, but with calmness. "It's just a couple bucks," she said with a shrug. He had tried to refuse. She had insisted. He had mumbled a thank you and walked out into the rain, ramen and granola bar in hand, not sure what had stung more, his pride or the fact that someone had seen his struggle. That receipt had ended up in his coat pocket. Somehow, it never left. When he graduated, he tucked it into his wallet, behind his license, as a quiet reminder. People are kind, even when the world feels unkind. Now, staring at the patient chart, he realized it was her, Maria, the same name, the same shy strength. His chest tightened, and he pushed away from the desk, pacing for a second before returning to her room, just as the nurse helped her back into bed. Maria was still pale, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of the blanket. "How are you feeling?" Theo asked as he entered. "A little better," she replied softly. "They said the results will be ready soon." He nodded and sat on the edge of the nearby stool, watching her for a moment. Then, carefully, he asked, "Did you ever work at a little grocery store near 8th Street?" She blinked, surprised. Yeah, I used to work the night shift there." "Why?" His smile was gentle. "You probably do not remember me, but I remember you." She tilted her head, unsure. "What do you mean?" He leaned back slightly, his voice calm but warm. 2 years ago, it was pouring, I was broke, exhausted, and trying to buy some instant noodles and a granola bar. My card got declined, and a girl in a blue vest stepped forward and paid for me." Maria's eyes widened. "Wait, that was you?" He nodded. "I never forgot it. I kept the receipt. Still have it." Her cheeks flushed, both from embarrassment and disbelief. "That was nothing, just $2. "It was everything," Theo said quietly. "I was at the end of my rope that night, and a stranger reminded me the world still had decent people in it." Maria looked down at her hands, unsure of what to say. "I always wanted to say thank you properly," Theo continued. "I never expected it to be like this." She gave a shaky laugh. "Well, now we're even. I buy you noodles and you help save my ovaries." Theo chuckled, the tension between them softening. "I'd say you came out ahead." She smiled for the first time since walking into the ER, and in that small room, beneath the hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet buzz of machines, something shifted, not because of a grand moment, but because kindness had come full circle. Two people who had crossed once, in the shadows of hardship, finding each other again, under very different lights. Maria kept her head down for the next few days. The moment she got home from the ER, she had searched Dr. Theo Ramirez online, and what she found made her heart sink. He was not just a doctor. He was one of the youngest co-founders of a growing medical tech startup focused on low-cost care and community access. His name appeared in journals, interviews, podcasts. The ER she visited was only a part of what he did. He was in every measurable way successful, brilliant, out of reach. And she had spoken to him like he was just a kind stranger. That Monday, when the clinic called her for follow-up care, she rescheduled, then canceled. Then rescheduled again, on days she was sure Theo would not be on call. She did not want him to see her again. Not when she knew what he was. Not when she was just Maria Alvarez, cashier and part-time babysitter. With rent overdue and a borrowed car with a sticky ignition, she began taking longer shifts at the grocery store and avoided the neighborhood clinic, even though she still had occasional pain. She told herself it would go away. She could not afford to be the girl who got attached to a kind face, especially not one attached to a millionaire in a white coat. But the world is smaller than people think. One rainy evening, she was leaving the pharmacy after picking up a prescription for her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Calderon. The woman's cane had slipped on the wet pavement, and Maria had wrapped an arm around her, guiding her slowly under the awning. It was pouring now, wind whipping the rain sideways. Maria had no umbrella, no jacket, just her faded work sweater. She tucked it around the old woman's frail shoulders and stood close, shielding her with her own body as they waited for the bus that would not come. She was laughing softly with Mrs. Calderon about the rain when she heard a voice behind her. "You always do this?" She turned, and there he was, Theo, standing under a dark umbrella, his scrubs half covered by a long black coat. His eyes were focused on her, not the rain. Maria's heart dropped. "Dr. Ramirez," he ignored the title. "It's Theo, and I should be the one asking, what are you doing here soaked through?" Maria tried to collect herself. "Just helping my neighbor. Her pharmacy does not deliver." He stepped closer, handed his umbrella to Mrs. Calderon without a word, and shrugged off his coat. Before she could protest, he draped it around Maria's shoulders. "You'll get sick," she murmured, embarrassed. "I'll survive," he said. They stood like that for a moment, under the weak yellow glow of a streetlight, wind cutting between buildings, the smell of wet pavement rising around them. Theo looked at her, really looked. "I wondered why you kept rescheduling," he said quietly. "Now I know." Maria looked down. I did not want to make things awkward." He tilted his head. "Why would it be awkward?" "Because you're you and I'm me." She waved a hand vaguely, still clutching the paper bag of medicine. "I did not even graduate college. I live in a room I rent from someone's aunt. My best friend is 78 years old and has arthritis." Theo let out a breath that was almost a laugh, but not mocking, just amazed. "And yet," he said, "you're the one standing in the rain for someone else." She looked at him, confused. He continued, "Maria, when I was in medical school, I thought success would be money, influence, getting out of the struggle. But then someone gave me $2 for a meal I could not afford, and it changed everything." Maria flushed, shifting on her feet. "I did not mean anything by that." "I know," he said. "That's what made it mean so much." They fell quiet again until the bus finally turned the corner. As it arrived, Theo helped Mrs. Calderon up the steps and waved at the driver to wait while she settled in. When he turned back, Maria was still holding his coat tight around her. "You do not have to avoid me," he said gently. "You're not less because of your job or your past." Maria bit her lip. "But people like you do not end up with people like me. Then maybe people like me have been looking in the wrong places." The rain began to let up. Maria exhaled slowly. Theo gave a small smile, stepping back. "I'll see you at your next follow-up?" She hesitated, then nodded. As he walked away, she stood still, Theo's coat still warm around her shoulders. She did not feel worthy yet, but maybe, just maybe, she could start believing she was not as small as she thought. Maria never quite stopped feeling like she was walking in someone else's world. The hospital corridors, the polished floors, the quiet efficiency, it all felt too clean, too far removed from the sharp realities of rent, groceries, and broken-down cars. She kept to herself during her follow-up appointments, answering questions politely, never lingering, and yet things started happening. The first was a bill she never received. She had been dreading it, knowing full well she had not met her deductible, that her ER visit would come with costs she could not cover, but no bill came. A month passed, then another. Finally, she went to the billing desk and asked. The clerk looked confused, tapping at a keyboard. "There's no outstanding balance under your name." Maria frowned. "That can't be right. It's been resolved," the woman said kindly. "You're good." Maria walked out with a swirl of confusion in her stomach. Then came the vitamins. One afternoon, she returned from work and found a small brown package on her doorstep. Inside was a bottle of high-quality multivitamins, with a note that read, "From your friends in the Community Health Initiative." There was no name, no return address. She held the bottle in her hands, heart thudding. It was nothing flashy, but it felt intentional. The final breadcrumb came via email. She had checked her inbox late one night after a long shift at the grocery store. Nestled between spam and ads was a short message from an anonymous sender. No greeting, no signature, just a sentence and a link. "You once said you liked numbers. This might help." She clicked on the link. Cautiously. It led to a small non-profit organization offering night classes in bookkeeping and accounting, with a scholarship program for low-income applicants. The deadline was in 2 days. Maria stared at the screen, then at the sender's address again. It was untraceable, but something about the phrasing, it was gentle, familiar. She almost applied, almost. But old voices in her head, those that whispered she was not enough, not smart enough, not destined for more, stopped her. What if she failed? What if they laughed? She had barely made it through community college before dropping out to care for her sick mother. Her dreams had rusted in the corners of her life. Still, she could not ignore the small warmth blooming in her chest. Someone saw her. Someone thought she was worth investing in, and yet that same realization made her panic. She was not ready for hope. She was not ready for kindness that might turn into heartbreak. The next day, she opened her email and composed a message to the clinic. Subject: follow-up cancellation, body. Thank you for everything, but I've decided not to continue with the program. Please cancel my future appointments. I'm doing better now. She hovered over the send button for a full minute before clicking it. 2 hours later, she received a reply. Not from the clinic receptionist. From Theo. Subject: follow-up cancellation. Body: Maria, I respect your right to choose what's best for you, but please do not let fear speak louder than your future. You once offered a stranger a simple act of kindness. You believed he was worth helping, even when he had nothing. I am just returning the favor. Do not step away from opportunity because you think you're undeserving. You're not a charity case. You're someone who once lit a small light in a very dark moment. Let me do the same for you. Theo Maria read the email 3 times. She sat back in her chair, hands trembling slightly. He remembered, not just the Goimi story, not just the night in the rain. He remembered her, the girl behind the register, the girl who smiled without expecting anything back. She was not a case, not a project. She was a person. She closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. Then, for the first time in weeks, she opened the scholarship application page again. She started filling it out. Name, address, story. When it asked for her motivation, she wrote, "Because someone believes I can." And this time she hit submit. It was supposed to be just a walk. Maria had the day off for the first time in weeks. She wandered the city aimlessly, sipping on a cheap iced coffee, letting the rare Southern California breeze brush against her face. She had not planned on stopping by the community center near Boyle Heights, but something about the crowd gathering there caught her attention. Bright banners fluttered above a makeshift outdoor exhibit, Health Beyond Medicine, Stories That Heal. Curious, she walked closer. The place was bustling, kids painting in one corner, a mobile clinic parked at the edge, volunteers handing out wellness kits. Along the main pathway stood a row of framed photographs mounted on easels, each one captioned in neat, handwritten lettering. One photo showed a teenage boy helping an elderly woman cross the street. Another captured a young nurse in scrubs braiding a patient's hair. Each image was a moment, simple, ordinary, yet brimming with something quiet and powerful. Maria wandered past them slowly, feeling oddly emotional. She had always believed healing was sterile, something that happened with medicine and machines. But these photos told another story, and then she saw it. The photo was grainy, clearly taken on a store's security camera. She recognized the scene instantly, even though it had been 2 years. It was her back turned slightly, one arm stretched out to tap her debit card. In front of her stood a young man in faded jeans and a hoodie, clutching a packet of instant noodles. She stared at the caption. Sometimes healing starts with a stranger who sees your hunger and doesn't look away. Her breath caught in her throat. The world blurred. It was not the $2. It was the fact that someone remembered. That someone thought this mattered. Tears welled up, hot and sudden. She stepped back, overwhelmed, and turned, only to find Theo standing a few feet away, quietly watching her. He did not look smug or proud, just present. Maria wiped at her eyes quickly. "You put that up?" He nodded. "You had no right to photograph me," she said, though her voice trembled more with feeling than accusation. "It was from a public camera," Theo said gently. "I requested it years ago. I never expected to use it, but when we were planning this exhibit I knew, that moment, it changed me." Maria's fists clenched. "You're acting like I saved your life. It was $2. It wasn't even good noodles." Theo smiled softly. "I was a broke intern who hadn't eaten a real meal in a day. But it wasn't about the noodles. It was the fact that someone saw me and didn't treat me like a burden." Maria looked away, blinking fast. "I didn't mean to be a hero." "You weren't," he said. "You were just kind. And that, Maria, means more than you think." There was a long silence between them. Maria finally asked, "Why keep that receipt all these years?" Theo pulled out his wallet and unfolded a carefully laminated strip of faded thermal paper. He handed it to her. "I kept it," he said, "to remind myself why I do this, why I became a doctor, why I started that healthcare startup. I needed something to hold on to, something that wasn't about profit or prestige. That receipt, it's my compass." Maria stared at the thin paper, her name on the cashier line, printed in smudged ink. "You built an empire," she whispered, "on a grocery receipt." "I built it," he said, "because of what it stood for." Maria looked up at him then, and for the first time she allowed herself to really see him, not just the doctor or the CEO or the stranger in the rain, but the man who had been a boy once, hungry and invisible, until someone gave him a moment of dignity. "I thought," she said softly, "that you were just being nice because you felt sorry for me." "I am being kind," he replied, "but never out of pity." "Then why?" "Because I recognize your strength," Theo said, "and because I still believe in the kind of world where $2 and a little courage can ripple into something extraordinary." Maria held the receipt close to her chest, and for the first time since she walked into that ER, she smiled, not shyly, not doubtfully, but like someone who had finally stepped into her own story. It started with a whisper, a post on a gossip blog, tucked between celebrity rumors and product placements. The headline was cheap and baiting. "From cash register to riches, supermarket girl catches millionaire's eye." Maria would have missed it entirely if not for a co-worker's text. She clicked the link out of curiosity. Then regret punched her in the gut. The post featured a blurry photo of her outside the health exhibition, standing near Theo, face partially turned away. Someone had clearly followed them. The article mocked her background, her modest looks, her job at the grocery store. Worse were the comments. "She must be good at more than bagging groceries. Typical, guys fall for the poor girl sob story. Let's see how long she lasts once the thrill wears off." Maria felt her hands go cold. She barely remembered setting her phone down. The words burned, not because they were true, but because they echoed every doubt she had buried deep, every whisper she had told herself in the mirror. "You don't belong in his world. You're nothing more than a fluke." By the next day, she had called in sick. Then again. Then asked to take unpaid leave. She deactivated her social media accounts. She stopped answering texts from coworkers and, ignored the call from Theo's assistant when it came. She spent the next 3 days curled on her couch, phone silenced, lights dimmed, a hollow ache in her chest. The warmth she had begun to feel, the fragile sense of belonging, seemed to crack under the weight of those cruel assumptions. She had not even realized she had started to believe in herself again, until it was shattered. Then, on the 4th morning, her landlord buzzed her apartment. "A delivery for you," he said, holding a plain brown package. There was no sender label, just her name written in a firm, neat hand. She carried it to the kitchen table and opened it slowly. Inside was a small, white jewelry box. Her breath caught, not because it was jewelry, but because of what was folded inside. The receipt. Faded now, still creased. The same grocery receipt from 2 years ago, laminated neatly, placed on a bed of soft felt. Beneath it, a handwritten note on thick ivory paper. She read it aloud, voice trembling. "That night, you gave me $2. I've kept that receipt ever since, to remind me of the kind of world I believe in. Today, I return 2 things in exchange, trust and a chance at love." No name, no signature, but she knew. Maria held the note for a long time, her fingers tracing the edges. She felt something stir in her chest, not defiance, not even courage, just clarity. People would talk, they always had, about the way she looked, about what she did or didn't deserve. But in this small, silent moment, with the past folded gently in a box on her table, she understood what mattered. She had not asked for a spotlight. She had offered a hand to someone once, and that small gesture had come back not as glory but as grace. She pressed the receipt to her heart, eyes closing. No more hiding. No more apologies for being kind. For the first time in days, Maria stood up, walked to the window, and let the light pour in. Maria stood outside the hospital for a full 10 minutes before she could move. The automatic doors loomed like gates to a past she was unsure she was ready to face again, but the memory of the little receipt box, still tucked safely in her bag, gave her strength. She stepped inside. The corridors buzzed with activity. Nurses rushing, phones ringing, monitors beeping in rhythmic patterns. Familiar, and yet, this time, it felt different. She was not here to disappear into the crowd. She was here to say something that mattered. A staff member recognized her from previous visits and pointed her to the break room. Theo was there, leaning over a folder, scribbling notes. When he looked up and saw her, his eyebrows lifted in surprise, but not the kind laced with judgment. Just quiet gladness. "You came," he said simply. "I did," Maria replied, voice soft. "I had to." Theo closed the folder and gestured to a chair, but Maria remained standing, clutching the strap of her purse. "I still get scared," she said, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "Of what people think, of not being enough, of being someone you might someday regret knowing." He did not interrupt, just waited. "But," she continued, her voice steadier now, "I realized something. I am scared of a lot of things, but I am not scared of you, and I don't want to hide from someone who saw something in me when I couldn't see it myself." For a moment, silence hung between them, full but gentle. Then Theo stood up and stepped closer, not reaching for her, just there, present. "I do not need you to be fearless," he said. "Fear is human, but I would be honored to walk beside you while you learn to trust again." He reached into his pocket and unfolded a small pamphlet, the header printed in Spanish and English. "Community Wellness, Education, Support, Dignity. We are expanding the program," he explained. "Free clinics, community education, mentorship. We need someone who understands both sides of the story, who can reach people not through credentials but with kindness. Would you consider helping me build it?" Maria blinked. "You mean work with you?" He nodded. "Not because I owe you, not because you owe me, but because the world needs more people like you at the table." He extended his hand. Not as a doctor, not as a millionaire, but simply as a man offering a beginning. Maria stared at his hand, then slowly lifted hers. She hesitated just a second, then placed her palm in his. Warm, steady. "I want to try," she whispered. He smiled, not triumphantly, but like someone who had just watched a door open and sunlight flood in. Together, they stood in that quiet corner of the hospital, two people who had once collided over a forgotten receipt, now holding something far more valuable. A chance, not for rescue, but for rising. A soft breeze swept through the courtyard of the new community health clinic, rustling the ribbon draped across its double doors. The sign above read, Centro de Bienestar Maria Esperanza, not officially named after her, but everyone knew who had inspired the heart of the place. Maria stood near the entrance, adjusting her blouse and smoothing her skirt with trembling fingers. Not from fear this time, but from awe. A year ago, she could barely afford a doctor visit. Now she was standing as the newest member of the center's outreach team, welcoming families who reminded her of herself, nervous, unsure, but quietly hopeful. Children ran between the folding chairs. Community leaders, doctors, and volunteers gathered around the stage, and at the center of it all stood Theo, in a crisp button-down, sleeves rolled up, smile both proud and humble. When he stepped up to the microphone, the crowd hushed. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady, his gaze sweeping across the faces. "A year ago, we dreamed of a clinic that would not just treat illness, but restore dignity. Today, that dream stands before us, not just in walls or medical charts, but in people." He paused, eyes resting on Maria. In particular, in one woman. A woman who once hesitated to ask for help, but now holds the hands of others who need it. She did not walk into my office as a patient. She walked in as a mirror, reminding me of why I started all of this. He stepped down from the podium, and with no grandeur, took her hand gently in his. "I want to say this, not as a doctor or a founder, but as someone who has had the privilege of watching you become exactly who you were always meant to be," he said, looking into her eyes. "We met because you believed someone else was worth helping. Tonight I am only asking you to believe the same about yourself." Maria blinked rapidly, fighting tears, not from pain or shame, but something far deeper. She squeezed his hand, nodding without words, because some truths do not need to be spoken to be real. After the ceremony, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the sidewalk, Maria and Theo slipped away from the crowd. They walked down a familiar street, lined with small shops and faded murals, until they reached a humble grocery store near the corner. The same store. Maria stood in front of it, quiet for a long moment. "Funny," she said, reaching into her purse. "I never meant to keep this." She unfolded the small yellowing receipt, the one for $2.17, dated from 2 years ago. The ink had faded, but the memory hadn't. "I almost threw it away so many times," she continued. "It was just instant noodles, just $2, but I kept it. Maybe because I needed to believe I did one thing right in the middle of a mess." Theo took the paper gently, holding it like something sacred. "You did," he said. "And that day you changed the trajectory of my life, not with the money, but with the look in your eyes when you handed it to me, like you saw me, like I mattered." Maria smiled, the kind of smile that grows from the inside out. "It's strange," she said. "I thought I would always be the background in other people's stories, but you made me feel like I could be more than that." "You already were," Theo replied. "I just got lucky enough to notice." They stood there, surrounded by the sounds of grocery carts and passing cars. Not glamorous, not perfect, but honest. Then, without fanfare, Theo reached for her hand again. "So," he said with a soft grin, "should we buy something? I feel like I owe you a real dinner." Maria laughed, light and unguarded. "Only if I get to keep the receipt." They walked inside together, past the checkout counter where it had all started, past rows of simple things made beautiful by memory, and into a future neither of them had planned, but both had quietly hoped for. Sometimes, healing does not come from medicine. Sometimes it starts with a small kindness, a shared silence, and two people who remember what it feels like to be seen, and choose, against all odds, to walk forward together. If this story moved your heart, reminded you of the power of small kindnesses, or made you believe in love that grows from the quietest places, then you're exactly the kind of soul we write for. At Soul Stirring Stories, we bring you real, raw, and heartfelt tales that shine light on the beauty hidden in everyday life. Stories of resilience, unexpected connections, and the quiet bravery of choosing hope. Subscribe to our channel now and join a community that believes in second chances, healing hearts, and the kind of love that doesn't need to be loud to be true. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that might just stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Because here, every story touches a soul. Maybe the next one will touch yours.